right. I guess while people are still trickling in, I guess we can get started. So on behalf of Northwestern Center for Human-Computer Interaction and Design, I would like to welcome all the undergraduates and graduate students who are joining us for this lovely Q&A panel this afternoon. So the center's goal is to study, design, and develop the future of human and computer interaction at work, home, and play. We want to develop new interaction paradigms to support a collaborative, sustainable, and equitable society. And we hope that this panel gives you all the opportunity to connect and engage with our wonderful esteemed alumni who are working in human-computer interaction, or HCI for short, in both industry and academia. So before we get started, I'd just like to share a few Zoom rules. So we invite you to post questions in the Q&A, which we will review as I moderate this conversation. We'll only use the chat to share sources and websites as they come along, and this event is recorded. So without further ado, hello, my name is Connie. I'm a fourth-year PhD student in technology and social behavior. I'm the moderator today, and I'm joined by our wonderful panelists. We have Diego Gomez-Zara, assistant professor at the University of Notre Dame, Natalia Smirnov, senior learning experience designer at Amazon, and Craig Schultz, an assistant professor of electrical and computer engineering at the University of Illinois College of Engineering and co-founder of Fluid Reality. So without, guess we'll just start our first question. Each of you, doesn't matter the order, but can you give us a quick overview of what your current position is and what it consists of on the day-to-day?
Sure, I can go first. Thank you so much for having me, and thanks for that introduction. Yeah, so I just started as an assistant professor at Illinois. My day-to-day tasks right now are lots of teaching, but also setting up a research lab. And my research lab kind of straddles human-computer interaction and the world of haptics or tactile feedback devices. So I spent a lot of time kind of thinking about the future of human-computer interaction and how haptics might play into that, and then doing a lot of research tasks. Yeah.
I can go next. So yeah, I'm an assistant professor. This is my third year. So right now, as Craig said, like part of is teaching, the other component is research. So right now, I have 7 PhD students in my research group. There are a lot of undergrads, and we're working on topics related to virtual reality, mixed reality, and human AI collaboration, which has been like, the very hot topic these days. And I wish I could sleep more, but so far it's just like, doing all these things together. And by the way, I have this nice way I could just keep together Northwestern and Notre Dame in my heart.
Okay, I'll go. So I am a senior learning experience designer at Amazon, and I work on creating learning experiences for Amazon employees to be more customer-centric and to apply principles of kind of working backwards design and continuous improvement to all their different products and services. So it's kind of nuts. Like my target audience is 400,000 people. That was one of the things that was kind of compelling about the job when I was considering it. And I do a mix of research and design. I do quite a bit of research, interviewing employees about their needs, working with subject matter experts to try to understand how to teach different content and understand more about different business areas. I conduct surveys for needs analysis, and then I design learning experiences that might be sessions, like virtual sessions, or self-paced on-demand trainings for employees to learn those different skills. So yeah, a mix of design and research, and I do a lot of collaborating with different stakeholders in the company.
Thank you all so much. I love that, getting us a quick peek into the day-to-day of what's going on in your jobs right now. I'd love to, now that we've talked about the present, maybe go like way back to even before your PhD time. We have some undergraduates and other like master's students and people interested in the PhD program that might be watching and listening today, and in the recording. So kind of curious, why did you pick Northwestern for your PhD? And the different programs that you may have all been a part of.
I can start, but I'm from Chile, by the way, so I come from South America. And I remember when I was searching for PhD programs, what I was impressed was by TSB, Technology Social Behavior, the program that I think a few years started, if I'm not mistaken, 2010 or 2000, somewhere around. And yeah, I really appreciate that kind of interdisciplinary focus. So like combining communication and engineer together was something for me. It's like, oh, that's what I'm looking for. And actually, I was just sharing this with some of my colleagues there, and like, oh, that's the program for you, Diego, because I study engineer, was working in school of communication. So it's like, okay, probably it's just like bringing those two. That caught my attention. I applied, and I think that was kind of like the motivation to get there.
Yeah, I could share. So my undergrad was in kind of media culture. It was a kind of human-computer interaction. I did some circuit design, and was always really interested in design and theory. And somehow I stumbled upon learning sciences as a discipline and found Northwestern as one of the schools that had that. Actually, it was the first school that started learning sciences. And was really, really attracted to like the mix of disciplines that made up the learning sciences faculty and projects and research areas at Northwestern, and it definitely included design and lots of collaboration with TSB, and I think it's Media and Society as one of the PhDs, and computer science, but then also the anthropology, ethnography, and cognitive science perspectives. And yeah, that just the hybrid of that was really appealing to me.
So for me, so I did my undergraduate degree in electrical engineering, and I was actually working in industry out in the Bay at a surgical robotics company, and thought that there was something really interesting about how these surgeons were interacting with robots kind of seamlessly, and really kind of went down the rabbit hole of kind of understanding this engineering from more of a design perspective, and was thinking about looking at master's programs that kind of mixed some engineering with product design or something like that. And really, I was like right down the road from Stanford. So I went and saw Stanford's program. And then I happened to see like a very, very early version of some of the master's programs at Siegel. I think they were just being kind of developed, and thought, wow, this looks really interesting, and a kind of a chance to get in on the ground floor. So I applied, and I visited, and ended up kind of liking what I saw so much that I went into a PhD program kind of over in engineering, but also took classes and was able to really interact with a lot of the things in Siegel. So it really fit my needs and kind of wants really well at the time.
That's awesome. Yeah, there's like I think Northwestern, what's really great about is this interdisciplinarity that all of you mentioned, the fact that you can connect so closely to all these different departments, whether it's like anthropology, legal studies, we have public health, we have such a wide variety of programs, both in Evanston and also on the Chicago campus. I know I like do a lot of work in health, and so there's a lot of community in both those campuses that is really great. And so I'd love to hear, because I'm a current PhD student, but also it's very important to know, like, what was your experience like at Northwestern? You mentioned a little bit about the programs, being able to engage with them. And if you could speak a little bit more about what that experience was like, oftentimes the PhD you change the things you're interested in, maybe. Sometimes what you're doing now is not exactly or even at all what you did before. So I'd be curious to hear, what was your experience like and whether or not it, how it shaped or impacted what you do now.
Yeah, I can go pretty quickly. I would say it was very critical to kind of how my research kind of interest and career has developed. I was doing a PhD in mechanical engineering, but was kind of taking classes in design. And really the entire time I was doing still my PhD in engineering, I was like, I want to do more design. So Siegel kind of allowed that to happen, and applying and getting this Siegel Design Fellowship allowed me to spend some time during my PhD to really think about applying what I was doing to human-computer interaction. So much so that after I finished my PhD, it was like a much more natural step to apply to a postdoc in HCI, directly in the HCI field. So I ended up going, I spent some time at a startup as well. But after that, I ended up going back to Carnegie Mellon, which is kind of like the home of human-computer interaction, and spent a few years there, which then kind of led into the position that I have now. So all of that kind of came from this ability to kind of branch out and do some interdisciplinary work, facilitated through Siegel and through the different design programs there.
The question was, how was your PhD experience? Yeah, I came in to Northwestern in Learning Sciences program with a very particular kind of passion for a domain. I was really focused on social justice education and youth media arts, and that's what I wanted to study and research. And I did give a lot of energy to studying and researching and publishing on that. But because the experience is so interdisciplinary and I ended up focusing on so many different kinds of projects throughout my career at Northwestern, I think it really expanded what I could do in my life. And I never expected to go into corporate after my PhD, and it probably wouldn't have been a person you would think would end up with a corporate position. But again, like I just felt so prepared to enter almost any kind of world with the skills that I gained through the program and through the design work and through research I've done with different projects. After the PhD, I ended up doing some consulting work for nonprofits. I worked with the Chicago Park District and did some evaluation and design work for their nature education programs. Then I moved to Philly and worked with the Free Library and kind of studied the way technology is taught there. So, and then I started my own kind of practice of creating playful experiences. And, I didn't at all plan to, again, apply for a corporate position and was not sure that I would be qualified. But then when it came time to like interview and present my portfolio, I was like, everything I've done actually kind of adds up to the skills that I need to do this job. So I think sort of the diversity of skills that you get with a design discipline and then interdisciplinary major in the PhD experience at Northwestern is really versatile.
So for me, it was like I was an international student. So like at the beginning, it was a little bit hard, like, learning English, like culture shocks, all of that. But I think the most meaningful thing for me was just like, one was the scale. Like basically, when I was in Chile, for me, research it was mostly oriented to UX. It's just like, okay, kind of think about usability, UX, and that was kind of it. So I remember like being exposed to some researchers, things, but it was mostly visualization, etc. But then when I came here, it was just like trying to open that idea. So like it was more about the interaction component. So like, for example, I had no idea about the conferences like Chi, CCW, all of those like Northwestern excels So just like trying to be there is like, wow, understanding what HCI means and how at the end it's just like that layer between us and the machine. So that was very impressive at the beginning. And second was the skill, imagine I was here and it's like, wow, these people have worked with Meta guys, or like that time was Facebook, right? Or Google. It's just like, it seemed like everything was just close. We kind of email and MIT. So it's like, realizing of that is like, wow, that's impressive. Just like being in the core, like all the things that are happening around this university, it's very impressive. So I couldn't at the beginning, it took me a long time, just like, okay, realize how important Northwestern and how well connected it was. At the moment, like I was just seeing many of my friends who were taking the masters or the PhD program, just like being hired by this company. So it was just like very impressive, as well as like being recruited in very prestigious universities. So more in personal perspective, well, I got married. I basically found love here. So after the third year, my wife, she is from Evanston. So we got married. Now we're expecting number two. So yeah, I think in that sense, it was just like it transformed my life for sure.
I love that. I love also appreciate the little personal touch on just some of the things that realistically impact people's lives. I think it's people often forget that the PhD, it is very much focused about the PhD, but it's also like at least 5 years of your life where other things also come up and happen. And so I do think that like one of the nice things at least we have here is the community and people who are really supportive and willing to help out each other. And so I really appreciate that and appreciate all your perspectives too on just life at Northwestern. We have a related question. In the Q&A that was about like as alumni working in different industries, how did you all figure out where you wanted to work after your PhD? Maybe we can say, I'd love to know, for example, Craig, about what fluid reality is, how you came to be a co-founder of it. And also for Natalia and Diego, like if you had always known, I think Natalia may have touched upon this, but had you always known if you had really wanted to be a professor? Were you open to industry? What kind of doors opened those opportunities and made you choose the places you wanted to be at? And start with Craig.
Yeah, I can start. That was a great question. I think, I kind of even touched on it in my last answer, which was kind of the energy and the vibe that I got from Northwestern. And one of the reasons I joined was because there was a very kind of like fresh energy that felt you could come in, make an impact, and like create new things that are really going to go out in the world and have impact. So I ended up right after my PhD program, I immediately joined a startup company of my PhD advisor at Colgate. So like that's one thing is like I kind of learned how to do this multi-hat role where you are a professor and an entrepreneur and a mentor by working with Ed in his lab. And I spent a few years there at a startup, which was in Chicago. And I still wasn't sure if I wanted to do academia or not, or continue on with startups. So I dipped my toes back into academia and did a postdoc. And then, of course, like one of the things I was working on, I was like, oh, this is really cool. We should spin this out as a startup company as well. So that's what we did. We spun a different technology out of Carnegie Mellon. We call it Fluid Reality. It's a platform for bringing very lightweight tactile feedback to virtual and augmented reality interfaces. Actually, the co-founder and I both went to Northwestern, developed a really good relationship during our PhD program, worked at that startup. He's with also a Siegel kind of fellow alumni. And so we actually brought the company back, and the startup company is now in Chicago as well. And we still have very deep ties to Northwestern. We just hired another Northwestern engineer. And yeah, we kind of see that like ecosystem around Northwestern as being critical to kind of bringing these things out into the world and getting stuff created.
So yeah, in my case, I think the story was a little bit different. I started PhD with the idea of being a professor. I really want to be a faculty. Actually, my idea was just coming back to Chile, but um, things happen. So I have experience in industry. I think that was something good about the PhD. Like I had opportunity to do an internship at Snapchat at that time. So the only bummer was like it was online because this was during the pandemic. So I spent 4 months working online to Snapchat, which was a great experience. Also, it helped me just to escape a little bit from the academic environment, just to understand how things work in the industry, and like it's more like a team oriented work. I think in retrospective, I really try to, I mean, I was just between, I was very towards like academia, but I tried applying a few jobs in industry. I guess something also, this was during 2020, so it was just very hard at that time, just like to be very competitive there. And I did well in academia, like in the job market there. So I don't know. Sometimes I feel like it was like that. It was just meant to be, but who knows? I'm not close to it, so who knows? I would love to have some experience like a startup or like that, but right now, yeah, I'm very devoted to papers and just like forming and mentoring students.
Be careful what you wish for with
Yeah,
startups.
I
I'll
know.
say that. It's not that
Right.
different from being a professor. So
I guess the scales are different. I mean, in the end, being assistant professor in engineer schools, like, yeah, it's kind of how it's a little startup, and you just,
yeah, you got to raise money. You got to
yeah,
get product out. You got to,
correct,
yeah,
correct,
totally.
right.
When I came to grad school, I wasn't sure if I wanted to be a professor, but I was really academically oriented. Very obviously a nerd for learning, wanted to study it for my PhD. And of course, being at a school like Northwestern that is so research focused and so prestigious, you get kind of tracked into the academic career. It was lucky to be part of to be connected with the design school, because there's people in faculty who've have connections with industry, but I wasn't really oriented that way. And I did think a lot about becoming a professor and staying in academia. But I was also disillusioned with a lot of academic prospects. And what was important for me ultimately was I wanted to always learn in my work. I wanted to always be kind of working on interesting projects and doing research and using my skills and my, skilled, trained brain. And I wanted to live wherever I wanted to live. So that was really important to me. And that was one of the constraints of the academic job market that really um, uh, dissuaded me from pursuing it more, is that I wanted to live in Philadelphia, and that was and wasn't going to budge on that. So so because of that, I explored a lot of different combinations of like job life arrangements and constellations, where like I'd consult for a little bit in this way, and then I'd do kind of like independent study with people and do book clubs so that I could still learn something, but I still had kind of work and creative projects, and I would collaborate with people on something playful and creative. And eventually, as I ended up getting this corporate position, I'm really struck every day by how much this job fits my set of skills. And I really do get to do research and design, and I'm always learning and trying new stuff. It doesn't feed all of my kind of like world passions, obviously. I'm like supporting, giant corporate overlord, but this is being recorded. But it is feeding kind of my creative and career interest. So I do feel like I'm very used. I like to be useful and I like to have impact. It feels really good when I do research that actually gets read and put into practice, which was hard sometimes in academia. It feels really good when I create something and people engage with it and I get kind of like very quick feedback. So those are some of the things that I've found resonate with my values in this position.
Appreciate y'all's perspective and different takes and experiences, trying to find and connect basically the thread of your PhD before, during, and after that. I want to call attention to the first question that we had gotten. And thank you for the person for being patient as we get to address it. But Natalia, maybe you could speak to this as well. And I would love to hear the perspectives from maybe the academic and even the industry side, since some of you are familiar too, which is this person saying that the current job market is very highly competitive, especially in AI and UX design. So what would be the most strategic steps for someone like them who has just graduated with a master's in HCI to take in terms of upskilling and finding opportunities? I think, Natalia, you mentioned all these things that you were doing. How did you find them? Who were you connected to? I think the specialization part that I mentioned is really interesting because a PhD is often about specializing into a particular topic, skill set, methodology, et cetera. And so would love to hear people's experiences on that specialization, the struggles, the benefits, maybe how it ties to the job market and broader experience in product design, as this question's asking.
Yeah, so I'm seeing the question is related to kind of AI and UX design and upskilling in those areas. AI is definitely so huge right now. I spend a lot of my every day, wrangling AI and experimenting with it, and I think that's only going to increase. But there is it still has, in my experience, kind of a limited range of applications, and human intervention and review is very, very necessary. And it's so much about like how to know the right prompts to pose and the right questions to ask. So I actually think that in the question asker's intuition around gaining broader experience in product design and sort of the whole process end to end of collaborating with stakeholders and figuring out business requirements. Like, this is stuff I had no idea about coming into the corporate world. I had a lot of experience in kind of pieces of like UX, research, needs analysis, but I didn't know the language of product design, and I'm learning it now. And I think that is really useful and versatile, again, to any kind of project. And then seeing how AI can speed up that work and kind of make it more efficient, and also how to know how to, like know when it's making mistakes, because it makes a lot of mistakes and hallucinations. And that's also interesting and is going to make people stand out who are not so impressed by AI and know how to work with it and know how to, add the human touch. So I do think that gaining experience in different kinds of projects, because every kind of project is going to have different sets of problems and different opportunities to increase skills on how to work with different people and different functions, and being able to transfer those skills across projects would be most beneficial, I think.
If I may add something, again, not from a industry perspective, but I think the main point in between AI and HCI is just how we create that interface to the AI, right? For example, large language models right now, most people interact through chatbots, right? Like ChatGPT and so on. But like, if we think what HCI can do there in order to create an interface to that, right? And I think that's the main question that many researchers are asking these days. So it's like right now, you see a lot of like multimodal LLMs, just like how they're handling or creating and just helping it be more creative or to be more collaborative. So I think is as Natalia said, it's just like it's becoming a toolkit. So like we need to learn those skills too. Maybe we're not going to create the next LLM, but it's still like we need to understand that language. Just like, okay, from there, what we can do. And I think that's the main challenge, either in industry or academia, but that's kind of like the future these days.
Yeah, I don't know if I had anything to add. But I definitely, even from my experience in startups, it's always good to kind of just jump in and always kind of question your assumptions. Like I learned a lot in some of our startups, just by going in and talking to as many people as I could about like their problems, about what they think, and your conception. In our case, we were working on a product description of what we wanted to build, and like your conception is like completely different after you've talked to like 100 people with different problems and different ideas. So you really have to like get out and see what people in these companies, like why they might be interested in AI or why they might be interested in HCI, and just talk to a lot of people. That would be my recommendation.
Yeah, I love this thread of that Natalia and Craig of like and Diego, there's just this idea of like communication and communicating and the transferability of skills. I think that's one thing that is particularly emphasized in the Center for HCI+D is how do you communicate, the impact of your work, the value of your work? How do you communicate to different audiences who come from different backgrounds? How would you describe your project to X versus Y audience? And so I think those are really helpful in developing the language, as Natalia mentioned, to be able to speak to certain product teams and things like that are really, really valuable and have come up a lot in my work as well, and will probably come up regardless of whether you decide academia, industry, a combination of the two. Somewhat related to this sort of like idea of like knowledge and AI specific knowledge. We have a comment or a question here that says, I know that HCI often involves quite a lot of computational technical knowledge like coding, programming, engineering, etc. How can students who come from a more qualitative background, for example, communication studies, art and design, integrate and involve themselves in HCI products and research, even without a technical background? I will take a brief moment to swipe the first response to this, which is you don't always need to have a technical background. It depends on what you want to do in HCI. There's the human part, the H of HCI, and you need both those parts to constitute the field of HCI. And so I would hope that whoever asked this feels empowered to use the knowledge of behavior, thinking, people, understanding, like empathy, all these things that are really critical to, we can't quantify people because people are very, very complicated, and you'll see that very quickly. But yes, lovely panelists, please jump in on your experiences and this question.
Yeah, I mean, and I see this also from our PhD students. I mean, they don't necessarily come here with, like strong background or like a very experienced background in coding in Python or LLMs. That's not the main purpose for them. It's just like, again, it's as Connie said, it's just like envision like how is the interaction between the human and the machine, which could be very conceptual. It could be in terms of diagramming, and then the implementation is another question, right? But like think in terms of putting the human first, and that's the main question, and then people are discussing about that. So I think that's the main motivation has to be. So like I have students who, are learning right now, they're catching up on like LLMs and all these things, but like they came here with this huge motivations, like how can transform how people use these technologies, what should be the next first step, right? So yeah, I will not be disencouraged if like I'm not a Python expert at all.
I would also add to that try not to get too intimidated by the technology either. Like I think a lot of people, at least in my area of HCI, the reason that they excel is because they can see a technology and they can kind of conceptualize like what it might be used for. And then they can use that knowledge and like predict the future just way better than most other people that aren't in HCI fields. So like don't get scared thinking that you're going to be the one, implementing and pushing the code to whatever product is or anything like that. Like HCI really excels at being kind of that middle bit between like leading edge academic thought and research and like looking at like use cases in industry and like asking those questions of like, how does this actually become useful? And I found that HCI trained people can ask those better questions, and their thinking is just like 5-10 years out in front of other people. And that gives you a really big advantage if you don't let like all the little minutia of the technology bog you down all the time.
Yeah, I definitely agree with those perspectives that there's a lot of room for human insight and pattern recognition in HCI. world. I come from a very qualitative background. My dissertation was ethnographic, and my favorite method is interviewing, and that's still a lot of what I do. And I loved even Northwestern. So my favorite projects involved like looking at a tool that maybe was designed here, or that we wanted to encourage people to use, and studying how people actually used it, which was always different than what the creators expected. And there was always interesting different new combinations, and often kind of predicting what they really wanted the tool to be able to do. And then people would combine different kinds of tools and have them all on one screen. And that's kind of like, I've been thinking a lot about the concept from urban design of desire paths and desire lines. It's like the way that people walk unofficially, and then it kind of creates a shortcut. I'm sure there's like many of those little paths on Northwestern's campus, and kind of thinking of like desire paths and desire lines of technology. So if you can observe how people actually use things, what they actually need and want, and then imagine a use case, then you don't need to be the person who builds it, because actually you don't want that person. You want that person to be really good at building stuff, and you need other people who can really imagine these different use cases, and create also like delightful experiences, and add like that ineffable human element to using something. Like, we're not just robots using the most efficient machines. So definitely, I think there's a lot of benefit to those qualitative skills. And you need to know a little bit. My manager says, like, I know enough to be dangerous about different like technical aspects. So like, know a little bit. You could always ask ChatGPT to help it explain to you, like a 5-year-old. And then you could always just be a curious person and learn from your collaborators.
Love that. Thank you, everyone, for your responses. I see a question from Kai, and it's very nice and very interesting. I think it'd be a good one to sort of end a little bit, so apologies, we'll answer that soon. But we have another question from Jack. As an undergrad, what are some skills to be thinking about or working on? Specifically, as Northwestern students, are there any particular resources we should be aware of? I can answer that second part of the question, but all of you, I believe, were also design fellows, which is one potential resource for people and taking classes here. So, or maybe there's something more broadly available in Chicago that students may have access to, or Evanston. So would love to get your thoughts on if there are any particular resources, whether at Northwestern or beyond, that were very helpful.
I was not an undergrad at Northwestern, but I did work with some undergrad programs. So I hope Design for America still exists. That is a really great program to get involved in, and experience different projects and different collaborations. I was also involved in Center for Civic Engagement, which partners undergrad students with internships in Chicago. So even if it's not an HCI experience, just understanding different industries and working in different work environments is just really helpful for, again, understanding humans, because you never know what kind of situation you could be designing a technological solution for. So yeah, just expose yourself to lots of different spaces. Those are 2 resources I know of.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've been at Northwestern, I guess, but I think there was some like maker spaces and places like that on campus. If the garage is still around, that was kind of coming up when I was there. One that I would mention is actually an incubation space in Chicago where we have our startup located. It's called M-Hub Chicago. And M-Hub is a group of 1,500 or so people. Some of them are startups, some are corporate. They're kind of all in one space, thinking about design, manufacture, all sorts of those types of problems. And there's just like a wealth of interesting problems that I think designers would kind of like to get their hands on there, that are all like very focused in industry. So definitely check that out. But specifically, like developing your skills as an undergrad, I would just say, scratch the itch that is most interesting to you. That was what was most successful, really not during my undergrad, but after my undergrad. during master's and my PhD program at Northwestern. You know, there are all these great opportunities, and take the time to really like dig into them and get involved with them.
I only can say, I think we have a good experience working with undergrads as research assistants. I remember some undergrads, you know, were part of research labs, and that also is a great opportunity. You know, if you're thinking about grad school, like being part of a research group also helps you to understand a little bit better, like what in research means, or like if PhD is for you or not. So if you can, you know, many professors there have their research groups. Sometimes it's just a question of like you can approach them and see if they are looking for students, and then they connect you with the other members of the research group. So that's something that I wish more undergrads could be aware of. But in general, right, I think there are many other resources. I don't remember this, but I don't remember like this other, I don't know if it's an incubator, but like 1871, that was the other one, like for like the tech companies here in Chicago. Yeah, I don't know if it still exists, but yeah.
I think it did. I think it did. Some of it did get wrapped into MHub, if I'm not
I see.
mistaken.
Yeah, I see. Okay.
But I think there might be something else. Yeah, it's been a while for me as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can provide a little perspective, maybe a little current one. So Madison has very kindly dropped a lot of the some of the organizations that our panelists have brought up, like Design for America, MHub. We also do have Computing Everywhere, which is grad students like myself will provide ad hoc classes on special things related to communicating and talking about computing. So skills, knowledge, etc. Sometimes they're like more workshop based. You can sign up for them. We also have the Bay Area Immersion program that you can apply to, where you'll get to actually work in San Francisco and do like design coursework there. We have the certificate program. And of course, we have the Siegel Design Cluster Fellowship that Craig had mentioned earlier, that is available for graduate students. And I can speak to at least my recent experience as a design fellow in 2022, 2023. I think it's a really valuable experience because one of the things that we do is we kind of like walk through the design process together in that 1 year long fellowship. And you also get to speak to different faculty because there's such HCI is so diverse and so widespread. So in my group, like I study like health in HCI. And so I got to talk to faculty who did like civic engagement or CS and learning sciences, education, visualization. And so it's a really wonderful chance to be able to speak one-on-one with a faculty on your project and get a perspective you might not have gotten otherwise. And also did want to give a shout out to the Center for Civic Engagement. They do have wonderful programs, both for graduate students and undergraduate programs, where you get to like work at a nonprofit. And I will say that like, true to what Natalia mentioned too, even if it's not like in a particular area or like related to technology, I do community-based work, and my partner I met through another organization that I actually worked with through the programs they have at Northwestern. And so it's really wonderful. You get to work on the ground, one-to-one with these people, and you get to see an impact. And so I think it's really wonderful. And also Madison has dropped the Engage as well as part of Northwestern. So there's a lot of great resources. And you, again, as Diego mentioned, if you're interested in doing research, we have an undergraduate research office that you're more than welcome to apply and look for. We've had undergrads in my lab join this program too. So last question, at least from the audience. So it's really interesting to see the varied career paths that each of the panelists have taken. What is one most important or surprising or unexpected piece of career advice you would have for early career scholars and PhD students?
I think one for me was, oh, sorry, go ahead. I hate Zoom, but anyway, sorry, just so I think the one thing, especially for people in academia, is just like the imposter syndrome. Like that never goes away. I feel like it never goes away. Like you always see a run and someone else will do much better or like whatever. Like I remember I arrived at the PhD program and I was just like the guy from Chile, barely speaking English, and like having people like, oh, they already did the masters at Georgia Tech or things like that, undergrad from Cornell. I'm like, what am I going to do here? So But it's just like believing in yourself, like you can do it and like go through that. I was a 5th-year PhD student. It's like, okay, I will do great. And then, oh God, like who is applying this year? Oh God, I have no chances. So it's like that thing never goes away. Even right now as assistant professor, you feel like, okay, now I need to get this grants. I need to do this thing. Like I need to get this paper. And like, oh gosh, it's going to be very hard. So I feel like it's hard to deal with that. And that never goes away, but it's just like trying to be confident that things will go well. And the other thing is just that, and I remember seeing this from undergrads, it's just like this huge attention, just like, you know, I really want to get that job in that company. And I was like, and seeing students who were very depressed after that, because let's say, oh, that was an internship that I couldn't get. And they were just feeling like they were very depressed after that. So it's like, thinking that life goes beyond that. It's just like if you have a job, it's like, wow, fantastic, just celebrate it. Who knows when the opportunity will come? Maybe it will take a little bit, like maybe the market is not great, but like, or like the application didn't go as you thought, but like it's part of this. So like um be persistent and just think like in the end you will end up in where you had to be, or like things are reaching in some way somehow, like we never know how. So like for example, I'm a Notre Dame. I never thought I was going to be a Notre Dame, and it has been a great place for me. I mean, just like I really appreciate and grateful for all the community there, but it's something like I never knew time ago. Like I have a different vision of myself, but in that sense you need to be confident things will go well. And there are different things in life you need to seek. Sometimes for them family, like could be security, things like that. So that's the main advice I have.
Sure. That was I wholeheartedly agree with a lot of what you're saying there. Imposter syndrome stuff is definitely alive and well in academia. I would also say like it's really important to invest in your personal relationships. That has paid kind of dividends for me over the years. So invest in, you know, the people that work above you when, you know, you're younger, the people that work at the same level as you, and then when you're older, invest in the people below you as well. And a lot of my best opportunities have come from kind of, you know, cultivating those relationships and being able to draw on those. I remember even when I was thinking about going back to do a postdoc at Carnegie Mellon, I had developed some relationships with 2 professors at Northwestern. I was able to call them and confer with them and say, hey, do you think this is a good career choice? Here are my options. And they talked to me, and it was really just a really valuable experience. So don't as Diego was saying, don't have your eyes set on, you know, this is what I want. Like be open to those opportunities that come as part of your network and part of people that are around you.
So my advice would be, remember that you're going to spend a lot of your life working, and it's going to be a lot of your energy. So figure out what you really like to do at work. So don't think so much of like status or where you've been tracked, or what you thought you were going to do when you started a undergrad or a graduate program. But even in like looking back at like what classes you've taken or what kinds of projects you worked on in graduate school, like what gave you energy and what gave you joy, and use that as your like North Star for figuring out what to do. And because like as I did that, I learned that I really liked collaborating. And when you work in academia, often that's really lonely. I really liked when I got to see feedback on what I produced. And again, that was really slow and hard to receive in the academic timescales. And so it was surprising to me because I was so academically oriented, but I learned that like this corporate industry position is actually a really good fit for me and what I actually like to do, which is collaborate, design, research, and have my stuff be circulating and useful. And I also, yeah, like don't be afraid to like mix it up in weird ways and not just use work as the place where you kind of get those needs met, but like maybe there's like creative projects or different schools. Like there's so much opportunity, especially with all the online stuff to develop your skills and interests. So yeah, figure out how you want to spend your energy and what gives you joy, and focus on finding that kind of work, and maybe even patching that together in some way. And as a little maybe hopeful note to the imposter syndrome, I actually don't find it as much in industry. So again, this is surprising to me because I came into this business world not knowing anything about business, and I was like, look, I am an academic person. I've worked in nonprofits, but here's my skills. Like, do you want me? And they're like, yeah, we want you. And I feel really, really valued and respected for the things that I bring, for the sort of research perspectives, for the ways that I think, because there are a lot of other skills in the organization and my team that I don't have. And so there's a lot of cross-functional collaboration. And so my skills are valuable and nobody else kind of has those same set of skills. So you're not being compared to exactly the same kind of people, which is sort of the condition of academia. So I can absolutely relate, though, that it probably would never go away if I stayed in academia. And I still feel lost sometimes, but one of the things you learn, especially by going through a kind of ethnographic design-based grad school experience where you're always kind of thrown into a new project and having to figure out a new domain, you learn how to learn. And so you can learn any kind of discourse or practice if you are curious and you keep asking questions and using the method. So, and nobody actually knows everything. Everyone is faking it a little bit. So yeah, try to have fun.
I love that. Very real and honest advice that I most certainly very resonate and also will carry into my life. Taking care of yourself is so important. The imposter syndrome, all these sort of things, the relationships you build. I love all of that. As a special little meta note, I do study a little bit of burnout intervention, not particularly for grad students, but for service providers and nonprofit organizations. And I can tell you one of the reasons why they stay in work is because the values, they work and they believe their work has value and their work aligns with their values. And so it's definitely a way to keep sustaining whatever you want to do and achieve and exist in life. Since we're wrapping on time, I just want to ask one final question, kind of was taking a huge step back, but would love to get your insights of what does the future hold for research in HCI? I can say at least I gave a training on other people getting involved. So like service providers in domestic violence organizations, trying to get them interested and empowered to be a part of technology and all the conversations we've been seeing in the past couple of years, especially with AI generated content, and thinking about how can it empower, how can it disempower, all these different things. So what does the future hold?
I'll take the first kind of crack at it. Well, one, I think that HCI is definitely growing, and I'm in a ECE department here, and people are always talking about the compute power and all these kind of engineering specs that have changed over time. But I do really think that it's we're kind of on the brink of another time where the technology has grown so much, and now we're like, it's kind of outpaced us, and now we are coming back and saying like, okay, well, what are we actually going to need to do with this technology? So like before it was always like, oh, the technology is so cool, we can do new stuff. But now we're like, we can do almost anything. Like we need to really think about what we do. And I think that's why HCI is getting a kind of greater importance. I saw some stats on Chi this year that were like on pace to like double every 3 years or something like that. Like Chi just keeps growing and growing and growing across all aspects of the discipline. So I think that it'll just become more pervasive, and the skills kind of in HCI are going to be more critical than necessarily these like super rigorous kind of engineering skill sets.
It's a good question. So I think in terms of the future, I feel like now this decade is a lot about like the relationship between us and machines. At least it's just like, again, creating these interfaces or ways to interact with technology. I think like maybe 2 decades ago, the main issue was just like, okay, let's make the machine work. And like, and you, if you have read Norman's book, like the design of everyday, goodness, the design of everyday things, just like a lot is just like, yeah, how we make that understandable, right? It's just like how people understand right away this thing. I think right now it's a kind of question that's getting solved more properly. Like right now, I don't think like there is an app that you have usability issues. Like you don't have that in TikTok or Snapchat, whatever. Like even my daughter, like she's 2 years and old, and she knows all of this. She knows how to zoom in, like all of that. It's impressive. So I think the question is like how we make this symbiosis just between humans and machines. So like right now, yesterday they announced the advanced voice mode of OpenAI. And if you see some of the videos on TikTok, it's crazy. It's just like it's having a person in front of you, right? But it's just like a circle moving up and down, and that's it, right? So what it will be in the future, just like what kind of relation will be. And I think that's a lot of like these companies are trying to innovate. It's just like they're telling you, oh, my copilot will be the next thing, right? It's just like it'll help you just to make more fancy PowerPoints. Is that what we're trying to envision for the future? So it's like, okay, that's when we need to put our brains and our energy and our creativity on like how we can imagine that future.
Yeah, I love these questions. I'm not sure what the future of research is. I think it's going to be guided by, various interests that fund the research and people who are involved in forming the questions. But I'm curious about like the human aspect. So how is all of this new innovation going to change the ways that we think and relate to each other? We know how, social media has changed the way that humans think, our attention spans, our anxiety. And now that we are so intimately involved with AI, how is that going to change the way that we think and perceive each other and relate? And I'm also hoping that some research goes into figuring out how we can actually like reduce the focus on efficiency, productivity, and more work and more growth and more into how can we actually let technology do more things while we enjoy more leisure and more, again, human community. And I love that your research issue, Connie, of burnout prevention, intervention. So how can we, how can this help us get into that fully automated luxury communism? So that's what my wish research was focusing on, but it was probably going to be about space.
Amazing. Thank you so much. We're a little bit over time, so I appreciate all our audience members and our panelists for being with us here today, and amazing and wonderful work that you all have done, amazing advice, and we wish you all the best in the future of your lives and HCI. And yes,